From the Dinar Daily, tonight we are diving into something you absolutely cannot afford to miss. The Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong are no longer just whispers in private rooms or small investor circles. What is unfolding right now is history in the making, and it is moving faster than many ever believed possible. For years, people laughed, doubted, and dismissed the idea of a revaluation or a global reset. They said it was fantasy, pure speculation, and nothing more than dreams on paper. But here we are in 2025 looking at real discussions happening in public with governments and financial institutions openly talking about mechanisms, contract rates, and floating systems. Stay with me until the very end because what I'm about to break down could change how you see the dinar, the dong, and the global financial future that is now staring all of us in the face. Think back just a few short years ago. If someone told you Iraq and Vietnam would both be on the edge of letting their currencies float or revalue, most would have rolled their eyes. Iraq was still being portrayed as unstable, divided, and too dependent on oil. Vietnam was seen as a manufacturing hub, but one chained to a strict, undervalued currency system designed for exports. Yet now in 2025, both countries are openly putting the puzzle pieces together for a historic shift. And here's the exciting part. It is no longer a matter of if. The real conversation has shifted to how soon. That change in language is enormous. Because once policymakers, central banks, and leaders use words like mechanism and basket of currencies, their signaling infrastructure is already being built, not imagined. The path is prepared. The tools are in place, and the future looks closer than anyone dared believe before. Let's take Vietnam first. For decades, the Vietnamese dong has been one of the most suppressed currencies in the world. It was kept low to benefit exports, giving Vietnam an edge in selling goods to powerful economies like the United States and Europe. But that same suppression created distortions. Now, Vietnamese leaders are openly admitting they are considering a floating mechanism, a major shift from years of tight control. Why does that matter? Because when a suppressed currency begins to float, it naturally corrects toward its real market value. And in Vietnam's case, analysts agree that value is far higher than where it currently sits. Imagine what that could mean for holders of dong worldwide. Instead of decades of waiting, the float could trigger a much faster climb, echoing what happened with Kuwait after its war-driven devaluation years ago. This isn't a rumor anymore. It's part of Vietnam's official conversation. Now, let's turn to Iraq because the news here is equally, if not more, groundbreaking. Iraq isn't just talking about adjusting its dinar in response to oil prices anymore. What's being revealed is that a contract rate mechanism is already negotiated, and it isn't solely tied to the ups and downs of oil barrels. Think about that carefully. For years, the assumption was that the dinar's value would rise only as oil demand increased. That would have been powerful enough given Iraq's enormous oil production. But what we're hearing now is even more secure. A guaranteed contract rate negotiated directly with major powers, ensuring the dinar has a safety floor. That means no matter what oil does, the dinar's rate will not collapse. This isn't just protection, it's leverage. It's a built-in safeguard for both the Iraqi economy and for those holding the currency. Why would such a contract rate be negotiated? Simple. Iraq needed international confidence and global investors needed assurance. By setting a locked-in value, Iraq signals that its currency is not at the mercy of wild fluctuations. Investors in turn can step in with greater trust knowing that value is protected. For everyday holders of dinar, this is a monumental shift. It means that redemption opportunities may be available at both the market rate and the contract rate. If you've been holding on to dinar for years, enduring delays, rumors, and doubts, you are potentially sitting on an asset that has a safety net negotiated at the highest levels. This changes the whole game because it's no longer about hoping for oil prices or political calm. The foundation for stability is already locked in through agreements. That is the kind of news many believed would never actually come. So why are Iraq and Vietnam both moving now? Why in 2025 are we seeing transparency instead of secrecy? The answer lies in timing and infrastructure. 10 years ago, neither country was ready. Iraq's government was unstable. Corruption was high and banking systems were outdated. Vietnam, while growing, was still too dependent on undervaluation to survive in global markets. But look at today. Iraq has stabilized politically. Its reserves are higher. Oil revenues are strong. Strong international institutions like the IMF and U.S. Treasury have pressured major banking reforms. Vietnam, meanwhile, has emerged as a manufacturing giant, forming trade deals with the West and increasing its global footprint. Both nations have matured to the point where their currencies can no longer stay artificially suppressed without damaging their economies. That's why now in 2025, the float and revaluation are openly on the table. And let's not forget the ripple effect this could unleash across the globe. If Iraq revalues and Vietnam floats, other undervalued currencies across Asia and the Middle East could follow. It could create a domino effect, a wave of corrections that shift global trade balances in ways we haven't seen in decades. Remember, many countries are tired of the US dollar dominating every transaction. De-dollarization is a growing trend. Nations want sovereignty in trade, and a revaluation of currencies like the dinar and dong provides that sovereignty. Once Iraq and Vietnam lead the way, others will feel emboldened to take similar steps. Imagine a future where baskets of currencies replace the dollar in bilateral agreements. That's not just financial news. It's geopolitical transformation happening right before our eyes. And it's why the story has global implications far beyond two currencies. Skeptics will ask, why should we believe it now? Haven't there been countless rumors for years? And they're right. We've all heard speculation that never came true. But what makes this moment different is that it's not happening behind closed doors anymore. Vietnamese officials are openly discussing a floating mechanism. Iraqi leaders are publicly referencing currency baskets. These are not leaks or anonymous tips. They are public on-record acknowledgments. And when central banks and governments start talking openly, the silent phase is over. It means we are in the implementation stage. That transparency alone is the signal many of us have been waiting for. The world doesn't shift overnight in secrecy. It happens when the quiet talks turn into official reports, international meetings, and public strategies. That is exactly what we are seeing now in 2025. So what does all this mean for everyday holders of the dinar and dong? It means preparation is everything. You can't just sit back and hope without a plan. If Iraq's contract rate becomes available, there may be specific requirements, documents, and appointments needed to access it. Redemption centers, banks, and negotiated paths may be part of the process. For the dong, the situation may play out differently. Because Vietnam is considering a float, it may not be one overnight revaluation, but a steady climb. And that means timing becomes critical. Do you exchange early at a modest rate, or do you hold and allow the float to push it higher? These are the real-life decisions holders will face. And those who prepare, those who understand the mechanisms and stay informed will be positioned to succeed, far more than those who simply react at the last minute. To put this into perspective, let's revisit the example of Kuwait. After the Gulf War, their currency had collapsed due to war, sanctions, and instability. Many believed it would never recover. But once stability returned, their currency surged back, shocking the world and creating wealth almost overnight. Now Iraq and Vietnam appear to be following a similar path. Iraq's dinar is being protected by a contract rate, and Vietnam's dong could rise through a floating mechanism tied to baskets of currencies. Two different paths, but both leading toward higher values. The Kuwait story proves this isn't fantasy. It has happened before, and it could very well happen again. Asterisk. The key difference is that this time the groundwork is even stronger with modern banking systems, trade agreements, and international oversight ensuring a smoother transition. Another crucial element in this unfolding story is the role of global banks. For years, major institutions like Wells Fargo, HSBC, and Chase have reportedly been preparing in the background for large-scale currency redemptions. They have trained staff, upgraded their systems, and created departments specifically designed to handle massive foreign currency transitions. Why would they invest so much time and money unless they knew something was coming? This preparation tells us that the revaluation and float aren't simply theories. They're anticipated events. Once the switch is flipped, banks will play a central role in guiding investors, handling redemptions, and ensuring stability throughout the process. But here's the key. Those who are informed and organized will have the smoothest experience. If you've got your documentation, identification, and a clear plan, you'll be able to move to redemption centers more quickly. Meanwhile, those unprepared may face delays, confusion, or even missed opportunities. Preparation is power. Now let's dig deeper into the significance of the contract rate. Why would a world leader personally negotiate such an arrangement? The answer lies in leverage. Iraq needed international backing during its recovery process, and securing a contract rate gave them that support. By tying Iraq's future to a guaranteed value, global investors could step in with confidence, knowing they weren't risking everything on unstable oil markets or political shifts. In return, Iraq gained legitimacy and economic stability. This wasn't just an economic deal. It was a political bridge. A guaranteed contract rate transforms the dinar from a speculative asset into a structured investment with built-in security. And for those holding dinar today, this means you are potentially holding a currency backed not only by resources but by international agreements. That adds an entirely new dimension of stability, one that critics for years insisted would never be possible. Vietnam's approach, while different, is equally fascinating. By floating their currency and tying it to a basket, they create flexibility and long-term growth. Instead of a one-day spike, the dong may rise steadily, adjusting to supply, demand, and global trade flows. This model allows Vietnam to remain competitive while gradually reaching its true market value. For investors, this creates multiple opportunities along the way. Some may choose to cash out early for a smaller but immediate gain, while others may hold longer, waiting for the dong to climb higher over months or even years. It's a strategic game, one where patience could mean larger rewards. And unlike sudden overnight changes that shock economies, Vietnam's float mechanism ensures a smoother, more sustainable correction. In many ways, this approach mirrors the disciplined long-term planning that has helped Vietnam become one of Asia's fastest-growing economies. The float could simply be the next logical step. Together, Iraq and Vietnam represent two models of revaluation. Iraq's path is anchored by guarantees and contracts, while Vietnam's is guided by market corrections and floating adjustments. This dual movement is powerful because it shows the world there isn't just one way forward. Both models can work, and both lead to stronger currencies, more balanced trade, and greater sovereignty for these nations. Imagine what happens when both countries launch their mechanisms around the same time. Markets will not just shift, they'll react dramatically. Investors will suddenly see new possibilities, and governments will have proof that suppressed currencies don't need to stay buried forever. This will not only impact Vietnam, but set an example for other undervalued nations, whether through contracts or floats. The message is clear. Suppressed currencies are preparing for their true values to emerge, and the world is finally paying attention to that reality. Of course, whenever such transformative news comes forward, skeptics will ask hard questions. They'll argue, "We've heard this before, that rumors of RVS have circled for decades." And that is true. There have been plenty of false alarms in the past. But what makes 2025 different is that this time transparency is undeniable. Governments themselves are making these statements. International institutions are openly monitoring the changes. These aren't whispers in back rooms or anonymous forum posts. They are visible, trackable, and documented discussions happening on global platforms. That is why so many analysts and investors are taking this moment seriously. When secrecy turns into openness, when the word mechanism is repeated in official speeches, and when baskets of currencies are discussed on record, the game has shifted. This isn't speculation for speculation's sake anymore. It's confirmation that preparations are turning into implementation. For everyday holders of dinar and dong, the question is no longer whether something will happen, but how to respond when it does. Will you exchange quickly or wait? Will you seek out redemption appointments for the contract rate, or will you opt for the market rate as the float unfolds? These are deeply personal decisions that require planning, patience, and understanding. The opportunity is real, but so are the risks of moving too fast or too slow. That's why staying informed through trusted updates is crucial. You don't want to make emotional decisions under pressure. You want to act with clarity and confidence, knowing exactly what your goals are. This is the difference between being caught off guard and being ready. And as we've seen in every major financial shift in history, those who are prepared often come out far ahead of those who are not. We also need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Iraq and Vietnam are not acting alone, and their moves are part of a larger wave of global rebalancing. BRICS nations are pushing for alternatives to the dollar. Discussions of gold-backed systems are resurfacing. Trade agreements are being written without US dollar dependence. All of these changes point to one undeniable reality. The global financial order is shifting. The revaluation of the dinar and the float of the dong are visible signs of that shift. They are milestones in a journey toward a world where currency power is more balanced, where sovereignty is respected, and where nations can trade on fairer terms. So when you hear these updates, don't just see them as isolated events. See them as part of a much bigger picture that is reshaping the future of finance for everyone. So, here we are standing on the edge of history. For years, the revaluation of the dinar and the float of the Vietnamese dong were subjects of speculation, mockery, and doubt. But today, in 2025, the pieces are moving openly, mechanisms are being prepared, and negotiations are already locked in. This is the moment where preparation meets opportunity. The secrecy is over, the confirmations are public, and the path is unfolding. The question now is not whether this will happen, but whether you are ready when it does. Will you step into this new era prepared, informed, and confident? Or will you let hesitation and doubt hold you back from history as it unfolds in real time? Stay with us because we'll continue bringing you the clearest updates on what may very well be the financial turning point of a lifetime.